Aloha Friday Live, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm excited tonight because we're going to be talking about leadership. We're going to be talking about entrepreneurship. We're going to be talking about the military spouse and all that comes with. And today I have Sherry with me, and we was talking in the back about the different facets that she has, right? And we're going to be covering all of that. But welcome, everybody. Welcome, Sherry, to the show. Thank you for being with me tonight.
Wow.
All right. Yes. But it's so good to have you with us. And yeah, before we get into the show, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you, Enrique, for being here. And I love this. Aloha. Hawaii was one of my favorite duty stations alongside my husband. And so I'm a Army veteran, a military spouse, still active military spouse, and currently stationed in Alaska. And I have stepped into the entrepreneur field as a coach, speaker, leadership trainer, and author. And my passion is just helping people find hope in the transitions and in the moments when they can't find who they are, to help them find who they are.
And that's amazing. As I was going through preparing for the show today, I realized, how much the military spouse does. The service member, as you know, because you actually get both both worlds in your experience, but the military member has their mission, right? Their objectives, their goals. Um, the military spouse has that and some, right? Because they also have to take care of all the things that the service member does not. And folks, for all of you listening, and if you happen to know anything about military spouse and the support given to a military member, the list is endless. It's endless. And a lot of times that role goes not thanked as much as they should, right? And so so I definitely know and appreciate everyone that is fulfilling that, whether male or female, because there is both. um and I also thank you for the work that you're doing in developing leaders and speaking to folks. We mentioned that JMT is something that we share as far as passion and work. I couldn't tell you how much that has impacted my life. I'm sure you can on your end. So tell us, you mentioned Army. What did you do in service?
So I went through ROTC with my husband at Central Michigan University, and I commissioned as an active Army officer in the Medical Service Corps. And so I served for 5 years, and I basically was the admin for a ambulance platoon. I worked with a division surgeon's office, and I did numerous things, and I was the S1 for a DISCOM. And so I was mostly in the personnel section, and I had the pleasure of going to EMT school. So I tell everybody I'm a little dangerous because I have a lot of knowledge.
It's often said, right? Enough knowledge to be dangerous. That's funny, but that. So you mentioned Hawaii. Were you at Tripler? Were you at Schofield? Fort
My
Shafter?
husband, at that point, we have had all three of our children, and they were middle school and high school age. And my husband was stationed at Schofield Barracks, part of the 25th ID, and he had the Bronco Brigade, if anybody's in Hawaii right now. And so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I lived there. The reason why this whole show is like this because I lived there for so long that I'm practically in my mind and heart Hawaiian, and I just love the island life. So you was there supporting, and you volunteer. We get to volunteer when we have opportunities. The military is a huge proponent for uh, volunteering. Matter of fact, I think that if you don't, there's something wrong, right? If you don't volunteer, because it's all ingrained into our evaluation system, right? It's part of what allows you to set yourself apart from another. Those are one of those little indicators that can. But what drives you to volunteer? What drives you to give back in that capacity?
That's a great question. So after I stepped out of my role as an active Army officer, then I just felt like something that draws people to serve in the military is being something that's bigger than themselves. And so I just continued with, okay, I need to still continue to be part of what things that are bigger than myself. And I recognized that I had a unique ability to help other spouses or wives at that time understand what in the world their husbands were doing and why they weren't coming home at 5 o'clock. And so I really started to just find ways that I could come alongside, help people understand, develop the camaraderie, the connection, the community, so that we were connecting with the community outside of our walls, and then also bringing people together with inside the military bases that we were stationed at.
And it's such a critical role to and don't mind me because I'm putting all the gadgets to make sure I don't miss a comment because oftentimes that happens. But that bridge, if you will, right, between a service member, the mission at hand, and also the military spouse and family, right? Because there are things that are not shared, because of mission, right? You get to say, hey, I'm going to this region or I'm going to this objective. It's very vague, right? And so, you having served on both sides, but you get an inside actually knowledge, right? Because you get indoctrinated into that philosophy and that way of strategizing around a mission that most spouses don't, right? And there are many groups, the family support system through the base and the command usually facilitate some of that, but oftentimes not as good as you would want them to, right?
Oh,
So
yeah. There's always it's and the Army speaks the big Army language, and so I was there to translate and to
right.
kind of be that liaison and that translate, and then it just and I was always encouraging people to get involved. Okay,
Yeah.
so get involved so that you have your own identity outside of whether or not your husband or your service member is home with you at this time.
And that's so critical. And we'll talk about how you got involved, right, to get to where you are, because one of the and that's why I love AMSE agency and places like Bunker Labs and things like things like that help veterans and family get into their own thing. And it's so difficult at times to try to find your own identity while supporting, but I think it's so critical for you to do so. I have seen entrepreneurs within the military system active and just blowing it out the water, for a naval term, right? Blowing it out the water. Um, in terms of their entrepreneurial spirit and their endeavors, and they are sometimes eclipsing the service member service, right? Which often doesn't happen. So, how did you get to? Now, obviously, you served your time, and then you became that role. So now you are in that position of a support mechanism for the service member now versus being the service member. How did you get to that where you could say, you know what, I got to do my own thing because this ain't gonna last forever, right?
Exactly. And really, it grew out of my passion for volunteering, because I was always like, my husband had numerous commands. So for 10 years, we were building FRG units,
Hmm.
family connections and stuff. And I was behind that, the leadership behind that. And so I saw that my leadership training was building leaders, and that was always my husband and our goal together, was to leave a unit better and to leave, like, not create a new program that they could not continue on. And so we were building up leaders wherever we went, sending them out. And then I'm also a part of PWC. That was my like real big thing, where I could connect with the women of the chapel, and because faith is very important to me.
Right.
And so taking those things, and I recognized at some point, I'm like, people are coming to me for advice. People are looking to me for mentorship. There's something more to this. And they say, go to the transition course, go often, go early. And so I started thinking that way. And I was like, what am I going to do when I grow up? I always joked and said, I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. And then I just was like, I need to be a coach, because that way I'm able to build leaders, because I believe that there's a leader in each of us. We just need to bring them out and train them up. And then the first person we need to lead is ourselves. And so coaching helps me do that and live my passion.
And well, everybody heard that, right? And we got a good handful of people on it. Hey, get out there, get out there, make something of yourself. Time is wasting, and it's so important now. You mentioned FRG. That's Family Readiness Group, right? Is that what you was referring to? I just
Yes,
because
and I
it's
know
easy for
I'm
you and
dating
I
myself.
to get into acronyms. Believe me, we'll do it all night long. But just for the benefit, I threw that in the chat. You for those listening that are not familiar with those, that you can understand. Uh, you know, you you say, hey, I got to do this thing. Coaching is a avenue that I can go, and for a lot of folks that are in the capacity of mentoring and facilitating the bridge between a person's current position and where they want to go, coaching is just ideal in terms of making sure that your passion and your work kind of meet, and it's no longer work, right? It's just amazing how that works. So how did you start the whole thing about coaching once you decided, hey, I need to establish myself as a professional, now that I'm on this side?
I just, it's really funny, but I just kept on seeing the John Maxwell team stuff coming through, and I grew up. My dad actually was part
Hmm.
of with John Maxwell, and he went out to California a couple times, actually met him, knew him. And so I was like, Dad, I'm thinking about becoming a coach for the John Maxwell team. He's like, do it. And so I'm like, okay. And so I found my people there, and it really, the funny thing about coaching is when you train for it, you grow so much yourself, and then you're super excited to help others, because all these light bulbs keep going off. And so that it was just like, this is the perfect fit for me. And to link leadership the way that John Maxwell links leadership to the coaching, it was like a match made in heaven.
Yes, I followed John, and I became obviously a coach through his program. I've been following him since the early '90s, when he was still in San Diego as a pastor, because I was a minister myself. And so I heard about his program through the church community. And then, I watched it go from basically a book to what it is now. And right, IMC is just around the corner here, and they're doing such wonderful work around the globe. So I agree with your dad. Yes, you did the right thing in terms of finding a group. Now there are other groups for those listening. There are other groups and other certification platforms that you can get that if coaching is one of the things that you want to do and feel like pulled to it, or it's something within the scheme of what you are able to do. But just find one that will support you and your growth, because as you mentioned, Sherry, it starts here, right? That will enable you to develop yourself in order for then you to use the platform to develop others. So that's wonderful. Now, let's talk about your connection, this philosophy around connection, because I love connecting. I love connecting people. I love connecting myself with other people. So tell us a little bit about what drove that piece of your pursuit.
Well, it really was my transition coming out from being an active Army officer to being a just spouse. And it was a difficult transition because I was like, okay, how do I connect? Who are my people now and stuff? So I had to find this place, and then I started recognizing, hey,
Wow.
I'm not the only one who's having a hard time connecting. And so I just chose to continue volunteering and pulling people together. And one of my mantras is, we're stronger together.
Mm.
And so we need to connect around things that we have in common, things that are we identify with, and pull together on that. And one of the things that I really wanted to help people do was ask for help, because so many of us think that asking for help is a sign of weakness. And what I like is to encourage everybody, okay, what are your talents? What are your gifts? And you and so those, so it helps you set this boundaries for when you can say yes to things, and the things to say yes to, and then you find out the people around you, what do they love to do that is a weakness for me. So then when we ask for help, we're asking people to help out of their gifting and their talent areas. And so that's what I'm always encouraging military spouses to do when I get an opportunity to speak, and I've done some retreats and everything. I'm like, we're stronger together. Get in that group, don't be afraid, and step in, help how you can help, but also remember to raise your hand and accept the hand that reaches out to you.
Absolutely. Now, for those of you who are listening, we're covering leadership and entrepreneurship. We're gonna get into Sherry's company here in a minute, but for those just so that recap everything, Sherry was an active duty Army in the medical field. She, did 5 years and then turned herself into the military spouse on the support element, while her husband continued to serve. And I tell you, Sherry, that's you mentioned who are my people, and that's a so there's different elements that we cover when we do transitions. The military member becoming a civilian, right? Becoming a military member took about 8 weeks for me, right? You was a civilian, and then you're a military person, 8 weeks, and you're ready to go. It's amazing how that process actually goes. For those in a collegiate type of program, it takes over 4 years. It's a slow pace. It's not so immersive and boom, but you still have to go through a process of forgetting this and learning that. And so there's still a transition. But that transition of a military active duty person to a civilian added as a military spouse is one that I have seldom talked about,
Mm.
because it's usually you're a military spouse. That's all you've been, right? Your service member went in, male or female, and you've just been supporting. But you did not just become a civilian. You became something else. And that world, that military spouse world is and I'm sorry to say, that this is the fact. It's seldom there's a lot of attempts to help. There are a lot of attempts to help. I know it. I was a senior enlisted leader in charge of the ombudsman program. I understand that there are a lot of things, but there are a lot of things that can't be helped, or or that they are not helping. And so you put yourself in a pickle almost. So how did you navigate those waters? How long did it take to navigate that? Because I know that must have been a difficult position to be in.
You know, it was one of those things that you didn't know. Like I always joke and say, you know, we think that you have to be a 50-year-old man to go through an identity crisis, and you don't.
Yeah.
And because I had that lie in my head, I didn't recognize that I was literally going through an identity crisis. I never sat down and I never answered the question, who am I? And so I struggled. So I got out. We go to a schoolhouse. I'm pregnant. And now I'm trying to identify with being a mom and being the best mom and the crazy mom, because now I'm taking all the energy that I took from being a seller officer and I'm putting into raising this child, right? And so, and then trying to find who I connect with these other military spouses, because they're spouses, they aren't veteran spouses.
Right.
And so it was interesting navigating, but it kind of what I shared, I found what my strength was and how I could give into the community. And how I could do that was I could bring my experience into the community, help, because I always think we are strong and we are so resilient when, especially when we know the why. And instead of having a bazillion questions about why, if when somebody actually trusts us with giving us some information, we can go, okay, I
Right.
can, you know,
Right.
do this. I can move forward. We can come together. We can make this better. And so it was painful. I won't lie. It took me about 10 years before I really realized that I went through a true full blown identity crisis, but I masked it. I masked it really well.
And you know, I was, because as you were saying it, I'm trying to envision this, and I'm like, oh my goodness, she went from, because it's easier if you just became a civilian, you know, just civilian, and there was nothing tied you learning to do that. But you went from one place to two different places and trying to figure it out. But I love that you said, you know, well, now I can become the conduit between uh, them and the command in a different way. I can let them know how it is to see that, because I was there. I was, you know, almost like, you know, without knowing, yeah, you infiltrated, found out, and then now you brought it back. Although it was through service. So let's talk about our connection point, your company. You know, how did you come up with that? I know it's through the coaching desire and trying to establish yourself. But walk us through that process, because there's a lot of military spouses that are looking to get into entrepreneurship. You know, AMSE does a great way, a thing of housing, you know, housing and facilitating support and growth, because I've seen that as well. So take us through the whole thing. Hey, I'm going to do this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I jumped on and I was like, okay, I'm going to be John Maxwell trained. I'm going to be a coach. I was in the process of writing a women's Bible study. So I, I just was like, okay, I'm going to just we're just going to start a company. We're going to do it. And then it was our connection point, because as you pointed out, I'm all about connection. So I want to bring people together around commonalities and make them understand that they're part of a community. And so that's our connection point, is about leadership. It's about helping people transition well. And the funny thing is it's morphed into more. And that's what we
Mm,
always want to see companies do. When you
right.
start out with something, you start out with a vision, but it always is growing. And so mine went into so now I see what I do actually saves lives, because
Wow.
I'm helping people answer the question, who am I? So they can be strong and stand strong in who they are, no matter what life circumstances are, because we are not what we do. That's my message. So many of us like to tie together who they are with what they do. We are unique on our own. We do what we identify with, and we do it well because of who we uniquely are. But that is not who we are. So if our job changes, our life circumstances change, we stay strong when we can answer that question, who am I, and stand on that foundation. And I believe, and so our connection point leads us to answering that, where is your spiritual hope anchored in? Because without hope, we flounder. So, and then AMSE was a big piece. Once I found AMSE, I found another connection with people who were that solo entrepreneur and trying to do social media, trying to learn all the different things. And AMSE was a great way to connect and make you feel like you're not alone on those days when you're just like, I'm done. Right.
Right. And in entrepreneurship, those come more often than you think. It's wonderful that you see your role now as a life-saving in a life-saving capacity, right? Because it doesn't necessarily need to be the O2 life-saving, right? It's realization of the true life that you can have within the life, right? And I you mentioned hope and having an anchor, um, you know, without too much detail. There was a loss on Monday due to lack of hope, right? So when you get into those situations, and you mentioned a life saving function of your company, that is truly when everything else seems dark, it's that anchor. That anchor, and I'm telling you, we all have lived this life long enough, and if not, and even kids have lived through some dark and terrible times. Um, Without that hope, uh, it will become totally dark. So you mentioned connections, you mentioned and that identity crisis that because service members go through that. um and that's what I'm saying. You've had it double double, if not triple. When you get out, a lot is tied to the uniform, the rank, the position. There's a lot tied to those things that you've invested all your time and energy in, and when it goes away, crisis comes fast. And as a service member that kind of went through, I remember 5 years post retirement, my wife's like, "You're still struggling, right? 5 years. That's a long time." And you can't see it. Um, so tell us about what you do in terms of the business structure. How do you help those out there looking for a company like yours?
Yeah, well, I put my title as transition coach because I help people when they're in transition, because our identity, any transition that we go through in life will make us vulnerable for an identity crisis. And so I have a free assessment that I let people do to go, hey, how strong is your core? Because I believe our core is who we are at the heart of us. And so through me recognizing that I literally was just waiting for the next place to be where I would find myself with each move and let 17 of them behind me, I created what's now called the Strong Core identity process. And so it's literally a way to answer that question. So I help people just answer the question, who are they? And get that strong foundation. And no matter if you have no idea who you are, have a pretty good idea, or are really certain, but you're always open to more. This tool, I've seen it work with people to where they're like, okay, this is who I am. So the next, unwanted life circumstance that comes my way, I will be able to stand strong. And so that's how I help people. I come alongside that way. I do individual coaching. I mostly, and just in teaching Bible studies, it's amazing how much coaching can happen in a Bible study. And so my favorite thing to do is to come alongside church leadership and help them build up their volunteer teams with leadership training, because I think when we build into our volunteers, which so many people forget to build into volunteers, and you train them, you create loyalty, you create connection, and you create power that you've not yet experienced in your nonprofit, church, whatever it is that you're doing.
And if there's anything that companies are seeking now is loyalty, right? There is an appetite to leave if we're not getting what we think we should be getting, right? That the whole pandemic period kind of was weird because hey, people was forced in, forced away. We had to restructure companies. The way of life in a company was not the same anymore. Oh, people got uh as to
Right.
what's available, what all they're giving that over there, and there was a huge exodus and just different things going on. And so I know that that loyalty base to companies is was shattered. It was shattered. There was a
Yeah.
lot of companies that lost on that front.
Well, and there's a statistic that 60 to 90% of businesses fail due to human relation issues. So when
Wow.
we are not building into our people, and like, John says it all the time, value people. When we are not valuing them, we're not building them up, they don't understand what the company identity is, then things will start to crumble. And I have a whole list of, the enemies of the company, but
We're gonna have to get a hold of you for that. What I'm trying to do over here is trying to find the assessment so I could put it in the chat. Now I found your book, so I threw it on there in the chat.
Oh,
Um,
awesome. Yeah, the assessment is right on when you go to my website, sherryeifler.com. It's like right there at the top, and you just click the free assessment.
okay, let me see.
So thank you for sharing that.
Oh yes, no, no. I mean that the whole point of and folks, if you're still with us and you follow, I see a handful of folks with us still. The whole purpose, and I should have threw this out earlier. The whole purpose of actually the next couple of months is to highlight veteran spouse and military spouse entrepreneurs. Sherry is actually she's a veteran and she's a military spouse, so she fits both bills. And what I want to do is bring light to companies out there that are doing things that people are looking for, but from the military spouse perspective and the community. And so that's why, the next, 2 months, actually through October 15th, you'll see nothing but military spouses on the show that are entrepreneurs, and we're going to highlight them for what they do. Now, let me see. I see. I'm at the website, but we'll find it. Let me see. Transform.
If you scroll just a tiny bit down.
Okay, but either way, we'll get it on there. Before the night's up, and we'll coordinate to see how to throw that in there. But so I did put your book in there. So let's talk about your book because I love authors. It is a huge thing, folks. If you ain't never written a book, it's a huge undertaking. It doesn't have to be so painful, right? Because there are people that can do things that you don't have to do. But writing a book is a challenge and a journey. So, what got you there? Because that's amazing. And what is it about?
Okay. Well, this Bible study, Royal Reflections, The Making of a Warrior Princess, um, got its start when I did a keynote speaking up here in Alaska in 2009. And after that, I was sharing little bits and pieces of that keynote. And people are like, Sherry, this needs to be a Bible study. I'm like, I don't write. I don't write. I'm like, you want to write it? Because I don't write. And it just wouldn't go away. So then when I'm in Hawaii, it was like, you're writing the Bible study now. And I was like, oh gosh. So I wrote it and got it published, mistakes. So this is 2.0. And it's about identity. It's about our identity in Christ. And so, if for anyone who is like, man, I don't know how to read the Bible for myself, I don't really feel confident in my prayer life, but I know that there's more out there for me. That is what this Bible study is for. And so, thank you for allowing me to share. I literally went from August 1st, finalizing the manuscript. Friday, it's loaded up on Amazon. And August the 16th, I'm going to be doing my first book signing at Barnes & Noble here in Anchorage. And so you can find out more of the details of all the virtual parties I'm going to be doing and stuff. I would
Outstanding.
love for people to join. Goal is to get it into churches and to just equip people.
Yeah, I mean, even in the church, and I'll tell you from a minister standpoint, and just a lifelong liver of the life after Christ, there are huge identity crises, right? Um, and we talk about going from one group as an active duty person to another group that's already a separation, but you have the inside, so there are so many different things. You go from the sinning to the saved, and how do you navigate that? Because this one, you have no idea about this one, and it's still one of those areas in our lives as humans, that when we go from one transition point to the other, um, there's a gap. And
Mhm.
it's funny, you think that there's a lot to being taught about it, or there's a lot of direction, and there's a lot of support, and you would think that, but sometimes no. Sometimes there are none. Sometimes it's like, great, you got the card, good on you. Happy life. And you're like, what in the world? When do I get indoctrinated? When do I get to know about these, And so hopefully your book will facilitate a smoother transition, even for those that are being saved, right? If not for at least a person going through a transition period in their life. So you're doing this thing now, you're coaching, you got this book. So what's coming up? I know you talked about the book signing, but where is your mind right now concerning, and you said your company went a different thing, it grew, it went into this other area. So what does the future look like for Sherry and her company?
Wow, I'm in the process of a reset, so I'm going to spend some time finalizing my new vision and mission. But
Oh, okay.
really, I believe that I'm supposed to focus more on the Bible study and push
Mhm.
and getting that out there and training people to be confident to be able to pull their own group together and go through the study, because this was meant to be a group study and an equipping study. And so I believe that's the direction I'm going to go. So I'm going to be on some form of a road trip doing a book tour, somewhere between my hometown in Michigan and Florida, where my parents landed. So we'll
Well,
see.
outstanding. Well, if I am actually in Orlando, that's where I
Okay.
am. So if you happen to come through here with a set of books, you let me know, and I'll rally some folks together, and we'll support the veteran community out here. Is uh wow, it's stellar. It's stellar, I tell you. And so let me know when those plans for Florida come to fruition, and we'll make sure to support you when you get through town. But folks, we've been talking about entrepreneurship. We've been talking about transition. It's a difficult thing. Business, what have you. I mean, identity crisis. And it's been so good to host you tonight, Sherry. Is there anything that you would like to share with the listener, that you would like for them to, to go to? I did put your website and things like that, but it may be something that you would like to direct them to.
Oh, you know what I want to mention? So part of this, my book launch and the signing on the 16th, Barnes and Noble does book fairs. And so I'm really big into giving back. And so with my Bible study, any book that's purchased, $1 goes to All Things Possible, or ATP Ministries, and they are with Victor Marks. And what they do is they work with those who've experienced trauma. He himself is a Marine veteran, and most of his staff are veterans. And right now, they are really fighting against human trafficking. And so if you want to support them, it is a nationwide. You do not have to be in Alaska. It's a nationwide book fair. And so you can get the details at my website or on my Facebook, Sherry Eifler Writes, or Instagram, Sherry Eifler, and you can join in. All it takes is a putting in a code. When you check out, you don't have to purchase my book. You can purchase school books with college starting, or if you are, just an avid reader and you're getting the next bestseller, you can participate in supporting All Things Possible Ministries.
Outstanding. Well, folks, we'll make sure to have some of that information as part of the recap or post live event in the comments. And Sherry B, you can feel free to throw anything you want the audience to know in the chat at your leisure when we're done, so that they can know where to go. And we all know about the issue of human trafficking. It's just terrible. But it's real. It's happening, right? I mean, the other day out here, I was in Texas, and no joke, I've never seen ever Amber Alerts in one day as I did while I was in Texas. I have never, I was telling my wife, I said, I don't know what's going on out here, but this is ridiculous. Now, I will tell you, Texas is a huge, huge country of its own, right? It's a country of its own. But it just threw me off because we do get them here in Florida. We see them, but not in a day like that. And it was like multiple days, right? So it's real, it's happening, and it is a good cause to go ahead and support. Sherry, thank you so much for being with me tonight. Folks, I hope that you enjoyed the conversation and the dialogue here. We have a military spouse entrepreneur, and we want to make sure that we highlight and support them. Thank you. Lord bless you and prosper everything that you do. I will make sure to support that Bible study book. So stand by for that. Folks, as we always like to end Aloha Friday Live, I want to thank Tommy Bahama for this shirt. Hey, folks, it's not cheap, but it's a great Aloha shirt. We also like to thank Honolulu Cookie Company for providing those tasty treats. And lastly, Moni Jefferson and AMSE Agency for all you do for veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs. We thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week when we get another guest. Sherry, God bless you. We'll see you soon. Everybody, Aloha Friday.